Thanks, Colton. Well, good morning. I'm Juliana. I'm chair of the investigative committee. We'll call our meeting to order. We do have a quorum and we do not have an on-site packet that I found. Is that correct?
No, Madam Chair, we do not have it on site. There was a handout that was presented in your packets for this morning.
Okay, great. Thank you. So for additions and revisions to the agenda, we do have an addition. We have a guest. We have Josh Nye here to speak with us this morning. We do have a full agenda. You are here to speak to us on behalf of the Kansas Nurse Practice Act and specifically 651120, which is grounds for disciplinary action. So we'll take a motion to amend the agenda to add 10 minutes for our speaker.
Patrick Goldsmith, board member. I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Sharp, board member, second.
All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. So we will amend the agenda. Okay, Mr. Nye, we'll go ahead and give you a chance now if you want to come to the table. You've got 10 minutes and the investigative committee we won't take action or comment on your presentation today. We're just strictly here to listen to your presentation. So.
Well, thank you all for the accommodation today. I've been working with Ms. Winslow as well as Mr. Macheers on just a case that I don't plan on talking about any of the facts today, but as a practitioner in administrative law in Kansas, I at least wanted to address the board from a policy and procedure standpoint where I've served as the securities commissioner in Kansas for 4 years, and before that was on the Human Rights Commission for 2 years as one of the commissioners, and have since then practiced both as a county attorney, this is my third term, as well as in my firm, specializing in constitutional law as well as administrative law in Kansas. And I recently got a case. My client here, Amy Seipel, is with me today. I know she has some prepared comments. Again, we're not looking to talk about facts of the case. I know that there's a hearing procedure, but it really comes down to the exercise of prosecutorial discretion that each administrative agency and even prosecutor in the form of criminal law at the municipal level and district court level that I practice in, the use of prosecutorial discretion to kind of find the right balance of the administration of justice, both in the context of actually adjudication in court, Kansas Judicial Review Act, and the appeals that would come into court from an administrative body like this, and then at the administrative level as well. And so really what I wanted to talk to you today about was I was a little surprised that you have no formal, the Board of Nursing has no formal diversion program or other alternative to enforcement program. And I take that back a little bit because I did find, and I mentioned in my letter, that it seems like you do have the context for a alternative to enforcement program, but it's only in the context of drug addiction, mental illness, physical illness in the KNAP program, which I mentioned a little bit on. You probably are far more familiar with that. So we kind of have the practitioner side and what I put in my letter as far as prosecutorial discretion, and then you have the actual nurse regulated person and regulated entity side, which Amy is here to represent today. So Amy, I'll turn it over to your comments and we'll see what time we have.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony in support of the diversionary process for nurses across our great state. The majority of licensed professionals in our state actually have access to a diversion type process. This includes physicians, podiatrists, chiropractors, licensed clinical social workers, psychologists, respiratory therapists, physical therapists, radiology technologists, adult care home administrators, and this is just to name a few. To be branded with a proverbial red scarlet letter and placed on 3 databases in perpetuity forever for minor offenses can have devastating impacts on nurses, both personally as well as professionally. I care about high nursing standards. But for minor offenses, I encourage you to consider a diversionary process. This public shaming form of discipline should be reserved for people who represent serious threat to public safety. On the National Council of State Boards of Nursing's website, there is reference to a peer-reviewed article by Kathleen Russell, who states, and I quote, "With increased recognition of substance use disorder as a disease, a more contemporary, non-disciplinary approach is addressed in substance use disorder in nurses that have been implemented by many boards of nursing. This method, known as an alternative or non-disciplinary approach, is a confidential program that requires ongoing monitoring of nursing. Alternative to discipline programs can be administered by boards of nursing or contracted to an outside program." Now, if boards of nursing across our great nation are employing these non-public, non-shaming forms of discipline for people who may have stolen narcotics from a dying patient, surely our Kansas Board of Nursing would consider non-public forms of discipline for de minimis offenses. For example, perhaps a nurse who inadvertently failed to pay licensing dues on time, or maybe a nurse who engaged in a controversial social media post or boasted of superiority, for example. Under my leadership as president of the Kansas Advanced Practice Nursing Association, Kansas became the 26th state to gain full practice authority. I spent, I'm sure, more than 1,000 hours working to keep nurse practitioners underneath the authority of the Board of Nursing. I spent time with legislators. I mean, you could see all of my testimony. At the time, I didn't understand that if nurse practitioners would have stayed under the Board of Healing Arts, which is what would have moved under that, they desperately wanted that, they would have had a diversionary process. I don't know that my actions would have been different, but it would have given me great pause had I understood that all nurse practitioners would come into a program in which there was no allowance, even for de minimis mild offenses. I honestly wonder how many nurses and nurse practitioners we have lost through this public shaming process. Without diversion, how many had trouble getting malpractice insurance or finding jobs or just left the profession altogether? So I implore you, we do need to protect public safety. And I'm thankful that you're engaged in that process and that's your number one priority. That is so important. But for mild, de minimis clerical errors, I implore you to consider a diversionary process like most of our licensing bodies in Kansas. And I'll turn it back to you, Josh, for any additional.
Yeah, I know we're out of time, so I just wanted to say the intent here is to tee up a conversation. If there is any interest, I've listed 3 examples in the materials. There are more. Amy has contacted various administrative agencies in Kansas, and there's kind of an informal diversion process. I've listed more of the formal ones that we were able to find on Board of Healing Arts. My profession has a diversion program. I called the disciplinary administrator to ask about the policies. It's actually codified in Rule 212, which I attached as the second attachment, and then the third is my own diversion policy that's patterned off of Shawnee County and Sedgwick County and Johnson County in Jefferson County for minor and major felony type offenses. And it really comes down to the first time offenses that can be very serious to help regain compliance, as well as de minimis. You don't get 2 bites of the apple most of the time if you have a diversion in your history. And I spoke with my own regulatory body, the disciplinary administrator, and they said, yeah, really, it is reserved for kind of first time to get back to compliance. And so if there is interest, there certainly is a willingness on my part to engage in the little experience I have in the Kansas administrative law to see what something would look like for Board of Nursing, like it does for the Board of Healing Arts. So thank you for hearing me out today. Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, We'll move on. How about announcements, Linda?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have two new hires. We have Andrew Martin, who is here in audience. And he's our public information officer. And he, you want to give a little explanation of your job description or?
I love the Kansas State Board of Nursing and I'm really glad to be here. And just for the record, I am married to Janelle Martin. If you know her. And I'm just so proud of you all and thank you, Linda, for the opportunity.
And then we also have a new part-time disciplinary counsel that joined us in person today, Samantha Harrington. So,
Thank you for your work.
let you know that.
Welcome.
Nice to meet both of you. Okay, we have our minutes from December 9th. You've had a chance to review those.
You ready for the motion?
I'm ready.
All right, it was moved to approve minutes from the December the 9th, 2024 investigative committee minutes as written. Edgar Goldsmith, board member, making that motion.
Sharp, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, move down unfinished business. I don't believe we have any, so we'll go on to new business. HAPN Strategic to Professional Solutions.
Madam Chair, in your packet on page 6, this is the announcement that KSBN received at the beginning of the year where the Heart of America Professional Network happened was going to evolve to become the Strategic Professional Solutions. And then you have their description and their objectives and goals on page 6. So the Kansas Nurse Assistance Program, KNAP, is still the Alternative to Discipline Monitoring Program, which is still underneath that umbrella for services.
Edgar Goldsmith, board member, I move that the minutes of the investigation committee be closed to deliberate on matters. Oh, no, we're reading this. This one?
We're gonna go on to the next.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just for our information, I believe. So, any other discussion? Let's look at the KNAP statistical summary.
Madam Chair, and on your page 7, this is the data for time period October to December of 2024.
Any discussion, any concerns?
Any trends that you're concerned about or?
I didn't recognize any this time. It's pretty standard, I thought, from before, so.
Talk about monitoring interruptions.
So on page 8 in your packet is the language that relates to the monitoring interruption in the KNAP KSBN contract, as well as the program's agreement that the licensee will sign upon enrollment into KNAP. For the most part, KNAP handles the monitoring agreements except when a request is made for international travel. Then that request is forwarded to the KSBN for approval. Of note, for the monitoring interruption, it's the time that is like allocated for an interruption is added to the end of the monitoring period so that it's extended.
This has come up is because we've had several requests recently for interruption. This language is pretty specific. It talks about making these exceptions in cases of the death in the family, significant family events, and I think there's some examples in the wording. we are seeing more requests for social travel. The requests are not coming. I'm gonna use the word timely, that's my perception, they're kind of, I think in some of the licensees' mind, it is a timely request, however, it is after the fact that a trip has already been paid for, and, and so it puts us in a precarious situation. Because it is financially costing these folks if we deny it. However, there's been a lot of research and literature, and Linda and I've sat through several conferences at National Council, State Boards of Nursing, that really to be successful when there has been diversion or drug issues or controlled substance issues of those kinds, it takes at minimum that 3 years for rehabilitation. And so we've seen a lot of, we've seen some folks come back impaired and not be successful. And so then, I have this request come forth that they're asking for social travel when there's not really that extenuating family circumstance, whether it's a death or something like that. It puts us in that precarious situation. So I think we wanted to bring this forth and review it. I don't know if it needs to be revised. Rachel,
makes the
Sydney, I don't know if you have any other comments. It's done on our weekly call. So there typically, and I will say, since I've been back on the investigative committee, it appears to me that there are more requests for travel and interruption in the impaired provider program. So I think this is becoming more prevalent. And Sydney, Rachel, I don't know if you want to do it.
Yeah, and just to add, so currently that has been delegated to the investigative committee chairperson to review. If that's something you guys want to revisit, you could potentially delegate that to the person that are farming. But so that's currently, and I would say we do see them. I think recently we've seen more in the last few weeks, at least from my experience. But
Have they been vacations or like my child's getting married in Greece or?
probably the latter. I mean, the first.
The first,
It's,
sorry.
we've seen
It's
a
a
couple of
combination,
both,
yeah.
and I think those that are, maybe and I'll just throw out some examples here, a grandmother on hospice or something like that. Those are, I think, covered by this language, I mean, there's guidance in this language. It's the vacation or social
Like a
requests
cruise.
that are really difficult to.
And it's my understanding we don't have anything, that's letting them know how much time we need to process these requests. If they're in a program. Is there any language that lets them know?
I'm not seeing any.
Would
Would
that be-
contract?
I think,
Would that be helpful for them to?
Adrienne, I might not have been clear in my comments there. I think my concern is not necessarily, it doesn't take us a long time to say yes or no.
Right.
However, they are purchasing airline tickets, cruise packages, and those are large dollar figures, I mean, a lot of trips that people plan a lifetime for. And they are doing all of that with the assumption that they can go. And so then I think that's the piece that is, when I talk about timeliness, it's more the order that they do it in than truly the time on the clock.
Which is why I'm thinking that if it was included in that information when they sign up for a program, that it might be, give them some guidance on doing those things before, checking in on it. That's the only reason I brought that up is.
And the language that you're looking at is included in their packet when they sign up. I think I'm unclear what that whole packet looks like, so I'm sure that it's lengthy, but it is included.
Okay.
Just maybe we need to highlight it or, I don't.
I know at work, we're instructed to get insurance on our future plans because nursing historically has been, if they don't have anybody to cover you, we're sorry. Hope you had insurance on that. And I
I
mean,
like
that's
the idea
across
of
the board.
some kind of a timeline or deadline. I think it just continues to formalize the process, and I'm very comfortable with the investigative chair maintaining discretion over those requests. And I don't know if there's any opportunity for people to submit as part of that waiver request on how they plan to maintain their sobriety, abstinence, whatever their other provisions are during their time, that can be part of the just to be sure we're reinforcing that the whole idea is you don't take a break from this
From
plan,
sobriety. Yeah,
from
right.
sobriety,
Right.
yeah.
The other thing that we've discussed is requiring immediate testing before return to employment or return, maybe not employment, but practice. And so that, you know, if there was that break, if they're traveling nationally, there's testing centers and ways to get to continue the observations and the requirements of the Kansas Nurse Practice or Nurse Assistance Program. It's that international travel where we lose that opportunity for surveillance. And so we've discussed having a requirement when they return to the States that there would be testing before they go back to practice. That is us getting a little bit into the weeds with KNAP. You know, we hire them to do that monitoring program and we rely on them for those details, and I truly value them as the experts in rehabilitation. So I hate to put too many standards. However, it does feel like we're better able to manage the safety of our public if we would ensure the sobriety of intervention.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Would you like Stephanie B. Graff from KNAP to come in June and maybe discuss KNAP and perhaps like the agreement? Have it available to review by the committee members? I mean, because I think we get into the contract language eventually too, but at least then it may answer some more questions for you. I know Stephanie and I are also attending the National Addiction Conference in Las Vegas next month. So I could present any data or if I run into any other states or parameters perhaps on travel and things that maybe the committee could suggest and recommend to the board. I don't, we can start there if that's what you would want.
I know we put this on you quite a bit, but I would like to know how other
Other
states,
professions and things.
other states are, forging through this, because I'm sure it's widespread. So it would be nice to have what their policies are, how they maybe already dealt with it, found the good, the bad, the ugly.
Okay.
I think that'll be really helpful, and to that point, we know our assistance program, I'll speak for myself. I feel confident that our assistance program is much more robust and supportive of our nurses than what some in Board of Healing Arts and some of the other regulatory bodies across the state. I think having, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, the individual from
Stephanie
from KNAP. I feel like I can never know enough about that KNAP program. So I would love for her to come and
Okay.
just, to me, it's very educational, and I think I learn something every time we hear from those folks. So I'd be very supportive of that.
Okay.
And I, to your point, Adri, I think it's helpful to know what other states are doing, but it's also helpful to know within our state.
Right.
I don't believe there's another licensing agency that has the support that the nurse practice, that our nurse assistant.
Focus on that.
Thank you for that discussion. Okay, I think, Sydney, we are going to take an executive session, I believe. Do you know how long we'll need for that?
For the executive session, are we taking that now?
Mhm.
I think so.
Oh, yes. Yes, I do not know how long. Rachel's the chairperson on that. 45.
45 minutes, 45 minutes, okay. So we will entertain a motion.
And when will we reconvene?
So 45 minutes, so it is 9:30. Let's do 10:15.
And 15, perfect, and I'll read that motion. Andrew Goldsmith, board member, in pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2, I move that the investigation committee recess into executive session for 45 minutes and reconvene at 10:15. The remote meeting will be reconvened by Zoom in suite 1051 Landon Office Building, 900 Southwest Jackson, Topeka, Kansas, 66612, as stated in the notice of the meeting that was sent to individuals who requested the notice and as published on the board's website at www.ksbn.kansas.gov. The justification is consultation with the board's legal counsel and assistant attorneys, Sydney Winslow, Samantha Harrington, Rachel Penny Townsend, that would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship. The subject matter to be discussed in the executive session concerns legal issues related to the litigation, updates on disciplinary cases and disciplinary counsel process.
Okay, we have a motion.
Sharp, second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. So we will go into it.
We'll see you in a bit, Colton.
Okay. We have reconvened back into open meeting. We are going to pause for just a short restroom break for the committee, and then we will be back in 10 minutes. So it's 10:18. Let's do 12 minutes. So 10:30, we will reconvene. Okay, we are back from our break now. We're back in open meeting, so. I think we'll entertain a motion to go into quasi judicial.
All right, Edgar Goldsmith, board member, I move that the meeting of the investigation committee be closed to deliberate on matters relating to decisions involving and exercising of quasi judicial functions as authorized by KSA 2013 supplement 75-4318 G1.
Sharp, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Okay.
See you later, Colton. Are you ready?
It's
Okay.
not over.
So we'll do.
Oh, maybe just. What's that?
Or am I?
I just want to be sure, are we, is this one?
Thank you. So we are back from quasi judicial and we have a few motions to make. We're in open meetings now. So we have a few motions to.
Okay, you ready?
You don't need anything this time, or?
Yeah, if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shark board member, I move that the investigative committee find the following cases be closed for the reason that no action is needed.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Andrew Goldsmith, board member, second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee find that reasonable grounds exist for believing the applicant or licensee is guilty of violating the Kansas Nurse Practice Act in the following cases, and that those cases be continued for further proceedings conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Kansas Administrative Procedure Act. Sharp board member.
Goldsmith, second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee approve by consensus the case disposition represented on the spreadsheet titled conversions. Sharp.
Motion, do we have a second?
Goldsmith, second.
All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee approve by consensus the case disposition represented on the spreadsheet titled inactivated by staff. Sharp.
Second, Goldsmith.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee approve by consensus the case disposition represented on the spreadsheet titled cases not opened. Sharp.
Second, Goldsmith.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee approve by consensus the case disposition represented on the spreadsheet titled reinstatement applications. Sharp.
Goldsmith, second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee approve by consensus the case disposition represented on the spreadsheet titled endorsement applications. Sharp.
Second, Goldsmith.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee approve by consensus the case disposition represented on the spreadsheet titled new grants. Sharp.
Goldsmith, second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
I move that the investigative committee approve by consensus the case disposition represented on the spreadsheet titled unlicensed practice. Sharp.
Goldsmith, second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Okay. So I think that concludes our open meeting of the investigative committee. So we will adjourn the meeting.
Cool.